Okay. Hi everyone, it's Natasha from Scotwork here. To celebrate International Women's Day, I'm speaking with Corinne Noyes, aka Madam Flavour. Corinne's the founder and MD of Madam Flavour, a Telstra Businesswoman of the Year finalist, a dancer, mother of Sienna, a forest lover, and she speaks a little Sinhalese too. So thanks for joining me here today, Corinne. Tell us a little bit more about Madam Flavour and your inspiration for starting it.
Yeah, so Madam Flavour is a special tea company. I started 15 years ago, and at the time I was feeling very passionate, and I wrote a manifesto about, wanting to not just have another product, but to create beautiful teas and beautiful experiences for people, really with a woman's touch. And reflecting on it now, I think that I was reacting, to my previous 20 years in corporate marketing, where it had been an environment that was less natural to me and a culture that was less natural to me. So I wanted to build a culture that I enjoyed.
Fabulous. So that was your inspiration, driving a different culture, or was there anything else that inspired you to start it?
It was, at the time I wasn't aware of it, but it was particularly around wanting to apply the skills that I'd learned, which were around marketing and product, in my way. And as I said, the cultures that I'd been in, which were large corporations, had tended to be, along the lines of, all about profit, all about growth. The idea of sort of kindness was a bit of an odd thought in those days. It was very combative. And whilst I adapted, it was never a comfortable place for me. So having said that, we created over the last 15 years a beautiful business that really does reflect those values and has been embraced. So it said that there was appetite for that. And now, from the spare room 15 years ago, we are in supermarkets nationally, we serve airlines, we serve hotel groups, and have now served over 200 million cups of tea over that period of time.
That's amazing. Thank you yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. We're speaking today specifically, I guess, about International Women's Day. So it's been occurring for well over a century. The first gathering was held back in 1911. And over time, it's definitely become a global day, and we tend to celebrate the social, economic, and, like you were talking about, the cultural and political achievements of women. So what does this particular day, does it have any significance for yourself, International Women's Day?
Well, as a woman, yes. It makes me think both about, the women around the world who are not in the position that we are, specifically in the group that I'm part of, but also in Australia more generally, who don't enjoy basic freedoms and education. It also has me think about the women of my family and how I've seen, progression. My mother, for example, who at sort of 20, after studying in Paris, got on a plane and went to her first job in Colombo, halfway across the world in the 50s, which was a pretty daring thing to do. Absolutely. And then fell in love with my dad there and married and ended up coming even further to Australia. She was very inspiring from a business perspective, because she moved into market research and worked in the mining industry in Australia in the 70s and 80s, which was a very tough place to be, and used to tell me stories around, one specific story I always remembered was that women weren't allowed in the boardroom of this particular mining company unless they were secretaries. And a delegation came from Africa headed by a woman, but because her name was unfamiliar, the business wasn't aware. And when the delegation arrived, they actually moved the entire meeting to a different space. Wow. For that reason. So, that was only 50 years ago. She was dealing, with that kind of really overt inequality in the workplace. Whereas, for me personally, it's been a different journey, and one where I haven't had to deal with specific issues like that, more just embedded cultural and structural bias.
Interesting.
So I think that I'm really lucky. I'm part of a group of women who, have had access to education living in Australia. I came from a family of strong women and a supportive dad. And also personally, I'm very interested in learning and reflecting on myself and others. That's led me now, as I get older, into a place where I can be a really positive role model, and I see that that's what there is for me to do. When I think of International Women's Day, I think for me there is being equality in my being, with the people that I deal with and work with, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, fantastic. In terms of probably getting back a little bit to your inspiration for starting Madam Flavour, as well as some of those experiences that that your mum shared with you, and also now you see yourself as being a role model for not just, I guess, younger women, but all women and everybody. Is that something as well that you look to inspire and drive through your business?
I don't consciously do that. If anything, I'm particularly interested in encouraging women to be kind to themselves and to take it a bit easier and to slow down a little, because I think that certainly when I was younger, there seemed to be a couple of ways to operate in the world as a woman, particularly in the business world. One was to either be very nice, which tended to not lead to much in the way of, moving up the ladder. And another way was to become really tough, to like out tough the blokes and be really smart and really switched on. And those, neither of those ultimately feels great. So yeah, for me, I think there's been this evolution as I've become older, which has been around being kinder to myself and settling into a more powerful feminine place. And I have been really passionate as I've been exploring that too, through Madam Flavour, try and offer some of that to women. So we have things like, tea meditations inside packs and mindful colouring in the packs. And, our social media often just talks about encouraging, kindness with oneself as a woman, as a human, but particularly women.
Yeah, I think women can tend to be a little bit hard on themselves from time to time. So yeah, encouraging that, and I guess also encouraging women to just be themselves and not having to be somebody that they're not. It's not necessarily going to be, the best thing to do. So that authenticity.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah, great. Thank you. Speaking a little bit more about International Women's Day, the theme this year is choose to challenge. So they're saying that a challenged world is an alert world. So does that particular theme have any significance to you, both personally and professionally?
Yes, for me, it's more around being conscious, probably, than kind of actively challenging in terms of how I am about that. So I notice both personally and professionally where things feel unjust, and I address them. So it could be something as simple as, why can't my daughter wear pants to school? Which they now can. Could be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Or I guess in a professional environment, it tends at Madam Flavour to be more, my opportunity there tends to be more around having women that are either in the team or externally that we work with, just kind of reminding them of who they are. Sometimes that can be a challenge around, you are capable of more than you feel you are, or right now or in general. So I quite like to challenge that and remind women, because it's a two-piece thing, isn't it? There's the structures, the laws, the cultures, and there's also how we respond ourselves as women. And we're lucky in Australia, many of us have the luxury of being able to, you know, study and reflect, and that can make a real difference in empowering ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, that empowering piece and giving other women the confidence to know that they can do something is really important. And that probably links a little bit back to what you were saying around the authenticity as well. You know, being yourself and giving yourself the encouragement, the confidence to be able to do something really important as well. Yeah, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a you know, a great network of friends in general, friends in general, and I these days I'm very happy to turn to them when I'm feeling wobbly about something, and I just know that they'll remind me of who I am, and then I'm, you know, good to go.
Very important, very important. Successful female entrepreneur, and you've discussed some of the challenges that you've faced already. In terms of bias, whether it, you know, probably speaking specifically around gender bias, have you got any, you know, any examples or anything that you can share with us that might have happened to you around that space?
Yeah, look, I think when I started working, and I don't know how much this has or hasn't changed in the last 20 years because I've been working in a Madam Flavour environment, certainly internally, you know, it's just, there's a lot of love and kindness, and I love the culture we've built, so I don't come up against it, you know, within the business. But in my early corporate days, all of the directors' roles were filled by men. You know, the CEOs were always men. There weren't many, there were very few senior women, and so therefore I was naturally, you know, in an environment that wasn't super comfortable to me in terms of feeling part of that group, and probably, you know, the same in reverse. So there were small biases, like we'd go on conferences and there'd be golfing days, which, you know, I just wasn't into golf. But so it was a super male bonding thing. So for me, it was like, how do, you know, I want to be successful in this business. You know, how do I find my way? And that was challenging. I mean, in some ways it was good because I had to grow and I had to think, and I was, you know, became quite strategic. But in other ways it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable. Probably helped you to build a fair bit of resilience, though, I'd say, as well. Experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which no doubt has helped you forge through with what you're doing now. So
yeah, and so that was, you know, that was in a corporate environment where also, if I was dealing with people externally, you know, I had a degree of power, you know, because I was supported by this big organisation. Then it became interesting when I started my own business, because often I was dealing with large organisations and there was an actual power imbalance, which meant that I tended to go into, and probably have done, a bit too much of the being nice way of, you know, female way of coping. Yes, so as I say, you know, lots of reflection, maturity over time as the business name has become better known and I've become more comfortable with myself. It feels less and less of an issue for me.
Yeah. So that you've mentioned that's how you've overcome them. I think just like, you know, having more confidence and building that resilience. Is there anything else that you might have done over time to overcome some of these biases or challenges, or do you think it's just the past?
I've proactively built relationships with powerful people in the organisations I've worked in, which has been really handy, because for the most part, the senior men in those businesses were very, you know, very open to being mentors and providing a sort of paternal, you know, under the wing, which worked for me. And then the other thing has been some training. You know, training makes a difference. It gives actual skills, which is, makes a real difference as well, whether that be, you know, all the world of communication skills and time management skills and negotiation skills and, you know, general management and management skills, etc., etc. That's valuable.